All right, here we go with the cosine function, day 2. Going to jump in with a worksheet here, do some problems together. Some similar to what we did yesterday, some a little bit different, so we'll take our time and take a look through here. So on this first part, let's start with the easy part. Let's deal with the period and amplitude. So I start to look and I'm like, well, I can't really see. Oh, down here, okay. So they say this is at -4. So it looks like my A value is going to be 4, so we'll take care of that. That's pretty easy to fix. Then we talk about cycles, so we can figure out our period. So we talked a little bit yesterday about how we're basically looking in the interval from 0 to 2 pi, trying to figure out how many times we cycle or repeat the pattern that we're dealing with. So I look at that on this one. And I say, okay, we're starting up here, down, back up to the top, okay. So there's 1, and we go down and back to the top. So it looks like our B value is going to be 2 because there's 2 cycles within our interval from 0 to 2 pi. So with that being the case, then my period is always 2 pi divided by B. So 2 pi over 2 would just be pi. So I've got my period, got my amplitude. So then we're looking for maxes and mins and all these other things within those values. So, just like we did before, we're going to go through first, we're going to go ahead and look for our maximums. So all those ones where the value's up here at the top. So since I know my amplitude is 4, and I know it's a little strange in this one because they counted 3 lines and wrote 4, but hey, we're going to roll with it. So for our maximum values, we see that there's 3 of them, so we'll get all 3 of those here. And we know the maximum value is at 4 from our amplitude. Now I just got to figure out, got the y's, find the x's. So we got 1 at 0. We've got 1 at pi. And we've got 1 at 2 pi. And as we mentioned yesterday, each of those maxes occurs 0 to pi is pi, just like my period. Pi to 2 pi is also 1 pi apart, just like my period. And that's going to be something that's consistent throughout these. So if I scooch over just a little bit here, label my minimums. Again, my minimums are going to be at -4, the opposite end of my spectrum. Again, y values, because they come back to the y-axis. And then my x values are at pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. Again, the difference between 1/2 and 3/2 is 1, or 1 pi. So again, that pattern continues to develop for us as we're working through this. Now this last one, we're going to have a little work. Again, our zeros are the same thing as our x-intercepts. So anywhere that my graph over this period crosses the x-axis are going to be 0. So I see there's going to be 4 of them this time. So we'll go ahead, we'll get 4 coordinates ready to go here. And I know, of course, with these, my y value will be 0 on all of them because I didn't go up or down any. I'm on the x-axis. But you're like, crap, I don't have what the x-axis value is. Even worse yet, it looks like they're in the middle of lines. How am I ever going to figure this out? But remember, those zeros, and we've talked about this before, are going to be halfway between my points. So here's what I mean. This first point is going to be halfway between 0 and pi over 2. And we've talked before about, I just look at this like I would a fraction. So if I had a number line, and I had 0, and I had a half, what's the value in the middle going to be? Well, between 0 and $0.50 would be a $0.25 of a dollar, or 1/4. Or in our case here, pi over 4. And then we talked about before, once you have that first value, it's easy to count up. So I've got 1 over 4, 2 over 4, which is 1/2. Then this would be 3 over 4 would be my next dot, so that would be my next 0. 4 pi over 4. 4 over 4 is just pi. 5 over 4. 6 over 4, which is where 3 halves comes from. 7 over 4. And then 8 pi over 4, or 2 pi to finish. And I see where all my points come from. Okay? And that's basically how we even create these graphs when we get down later when we have the equations, which actually is what we're going to deal with next. So, again, it's just about break it down some more, and kind of work it. But today we're going to expand our graphing skills a little bit. Sketch the graph of each function in the interval from 0 to 2 pi. Now, that may mean 1 cycle, it may mean 2, it may mean 3, I don't know. So let's see here. Let's take a look at number 3. So I'm giving you the amplitude is 3. The number of cycles is 2, because again, that's my b value. And the period is pi, and I got that from doing 2 pi over b. Okay, just to let you see where all those values came from. So, when I go to graph, my amplitude tells me my max and my min. Okay. Now this time when I graph, I got to think for a little bit. Because my very last line is going to be 2 pi. Because we're graphing from 0 to 2 pi. You're like, but wait a minute, the period's only pi though. So how am I supposed to mess with this? Okay, well, pi is right in the middle of 0 and 2 pi. But within each of those values, I'm still going to have my 5 points. So for my first cycle, my first period, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. And then when I go to do my second period, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. Now, no, don't worry. This isn't going to take forever to come up with all the values. This is really going to go quick. It's going to be slick. Just stay with me. So again, remember, basically right now, I got 0, I got 1, I got 2. Okay, we just forget about the pi part. So when I go to make my values, I go, okay, here we go again. What's between 0 and 1? Well, 1/2 is, so pi over 2. Okay. So then one more, and then we're just going to roll with this. This is going to be slick. Just stay with me. What's between 0 and 1/2? Wait a minute. I think we just got done talking about this. 0 and 1/2 is 1/4. So this is 1/4, which is pi over 4. Now watch the run begin. 0, 1/4, 2/4, which is 1/2, 3/4. I'll come back to doing this in a minute. I just want you to watch how this goes. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, which is 1, 5/4, 6/4, but does that reduce? Yeah, I can divide each of those by 2. So that's 3/2. 7/4, and 8/4, which is 2. I just kept adding a 4th each time. You're like, okay, what'd you do all that for? Because now I just put the pi back in with it in its reduced form. And I've got all of my values done. Woohoo! Okay, so expanding this really isn't that much different. Now, some of you may want to do this on a scratch piece or something. Maybe you see too many numbers, but I wanted you to see how this plays out. So now, the only thing I've got left to think about, kind of doing a rewind to yesterday, is where does my graph start? Does it start at the maximum value, or does it start at the minimum? Well, my A value here is 3. So, since my A value is positive, it's greater than 1, we're going to start at the max. So we start at the max, then 0, then down to the min, then 0, and then back up to the max. And that's where we're used to stopping. But we're not going to stop this time. We're going to keep right on going. So just keep following the pattern. So we went max, 0, min, 0, max, 0, min, 0, max. And I still ended up back where I started. And again, it's all about the curves. And I get my 2 complete cycles. First cycle, 0 to pi. Second cycle, pi to 2 pi. And I'm done. Okay, so this really isn't that bad. And sometimes you may even get lucky and you still may only have to do 1 cycle. Okay, it kind of depends. So, okay. That one was kind of, that's okay, all right. Oh, number 5. Now this one, I'm going to admit, this one's going to get a little crazy. You're like, oh, super. All right, so let's see what we've got here. My A value is -2. Now I understand that as far as my amplitude goes, that doesn't matter. It's just going to tell me where my max and my min is. My B value is 4, which means we are going to have 4 cycles that we put this through. I'm even going to expand this a little bit because we may need the room. And my period then, since my B value is 4, is going to be 2 pi over 4, but that reduces to pi over 2. So, okay, here's what I got to think about. 4 cycles. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4 cycles, of which the last one ends at 2 pi. And then each of my periods tells me where one of my cycles is going to be. So pi over 2, 1/2 plus 1/2 is 1 plus another, because again it's 1 over 2, 2 over 2, 3 over 2, 4 over 2. So those are actually going to be where I repeat my values. 1, 2, 3, 4 full cycles. So hopefully you don't write huge, because this is going to get a little squishy. So you're like, okay, let's just deal with that first one, because again, it's going to flow like the last one did once we get through here. So 1, 2, 3 lines. Okay. What's in the middle is 0 and 1/2. I think we've done this 3 times already. Pi over 4. Okay. This time, though, I'm going to cut that in half. So again, if I'm looking at a number line, I'm saying, okay, this is 0, this is 1/4. The middle is just multiplying your denominator by 2. So we're multiplying by 1/2, which would be 1/8. So this little guy here is pi over 8, and our counting is going to begin. You're like, woo, that's a lot of values to do. That happens sometimes. Okay, so down here at the bottom, I got 1/8, 2/8, because 2 over 8 reduces to 1/4, 3/8, 4/8, and you're like, you're really going to write this all the way out? Yeah, I am, because I want to be able to look up at this and make sure that I've done this correctly. Now, if you want to try and shortcut some pieces of this, you can, but I'm not guaranteeing it's going to work out well for you, especially since we're kind of rookies at this. So I just keep adding my 8s all the way through, and I notice at the end 16 divided by 8 is 2. So I'm feeling pretty good with this. So my job becomes to make sure, can I reduce these or not? Okay, 1 over 8 I got, 2 over 8's 1/4, 3 over 8, nope. And if I need to use math or enter, I could. 4 over 8's 1/2. So we got our 1/2. 5 over 8 does not reduce. For those of you already out there griping, oh my gosh, there's too many numbers and 2 smashed with space. I'm sorry about that. 6 over 8 reduces to 3/4. 7 over 8 does not reduce. 8 over 8's pi, so I'm looking good. That's kind of my checkpoint. 9 pi over 8. 10 pi over 8 reduces to 5 pi over 4. 11 pi doesn't reduce. Now, I'll always have somebody, when we get to about here, say, hey, what if I didn't label every single one. What if I just did like the middle one on each? So pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, just to show that I was continuing to go. I don't have a problem with that, but just make sure you don't forget about some of the points when you're going to graph. So if you're trying to be a little less squished, you have that as an option. 12 over 8 reduces, 13 over 8 doesn't. 14 over 8, they both go down by 2. And 15 pi over 8. Okay. Whew. Got all that set. Better use a really different color here. So now, the only thing I got left to think about is, do I start at the max or the min? Well, let's use our last one as an example. Up here, my a value is positive. Started at a max. Down here, my a value is negative, so I start at a min. And again, min, 0. Max, 0. Min. I always should start and stop at the same place within a cycle, and I did. So then I keep going. 0, max, min, 0. Good. 0, max, 0, excuse me, min, 0, max, 0, min. And now I just get to make all of my curves as I draw all the way through to the end of my 4 cycles. Wow. Okay. That kind of took a while, but again, it's getting used to it. And again, if you don't like the smashed up, just do like the middle value in each one. But you do have to show me some of the values. You can't just have these lines and go, woo, curve. Yeah, no. Okay, otherwise that won't quite get us to where we need to be. Oh. None of the other ones I gave you are quite that intense. Okay, just to give you a heads up. Get some more intensity next week, though. All right. Write an equation of a cosine function. Y equals a cosine of bx. And again, I need to know what the a and b values are. Now, the a value should be easy to pick up from these. So I look and I'm like, okay, 2. And again, it starts at the maximum, which is important to take note of, because it means my a value will actually be positive this time. If it started at the minimum, I know I have to use the negative. So once I get that, then I'm like, okay, and then how many cycles are there? Well, let's look between 0 and 2 pi. Looks like 1 cycle, which means my b value is going to be 1, which means when I go to make my equation, y equals a cosine of b. Now, do I have to put the 1 in there? No, I could just leave it as x, but if you put the 1, that's okay too. And I get that situated. Well, and shoot, I just did the one that I didn't want to do. Well, so goes life. We'll go ahead and do 8 anyway, because I know we're going to see plenty more of these coming up. So again, I look and I go, okay, my a value this time, what is it going to be? Now, I'm assuming at this point I'm hearing some of you say -2. Some of you may be saying something else, because -2 is not right. Like, why not? Well, because I notice -1 is down here, and there's 2 lines to get there, which means this is -0.5. This would be -1, and this would be -1.5. So, and also my a this time is a negative. It's not just 1.5. Why? Because it starts at the minimum. Okay, I have to pay attention to those detail things, otherwise this doesn't work out for me. So I get that set. Now I got to figure out what my b value is. So again, how many cycles do I have between 0 and 2 pi? So back to the min right there. So there's 1, back to the min, I've got 2 cycles. So my b value is 2. And once I have that, y equals negative 1.5 cosine 2x. 2 cycles, starting at the minimum. Rolling, people, rolling. So now if you haven't done some stuff off of yesterday's, maybe you look at this, you're like, oh, I think I can actually do this now. And get this finished off, check the keys and all that good stuff. Okay, last part. Write the equation of the cosine graph given the following information. Now pay attention to where I wrote stars this time. So, amplitude and cycles. Hey, that was nice. I gave you the a value, and I actually gave you the b value this time. I'm currently giving myself a pat on the back for being nice. Y equals 4, my a value, cosine of 2x. Okay? Doesn't get much easier than that. Now, am I going to be that nice all the time? No. Silly people. So, last one I'm going to do is going to be 12. So this time, I'm not quite as nice. I give you the period. Now, to get the number of cycles, to get my b value, remember, we set that equal to my mini period expression, which is 2 pi over b. And I take my proportion and I cross multiply. So 2 pi times 1 is 2 pi. 4 pi b. Then again, I'm solving for b. So I go ahead, I divide through by the 4 pi. And my b value, be careful. It's not 4 divided by 2, this isn't 2. The 4 is on the bottom. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, but it's 1/2. And so now that I've got my 1/2, y equals a cosine bx. All right, job. Finish off this. Finish off yesterday's. If you haven't, go back and start looking at some of your other homework if you have not done it, because next week when we have our quiz, there will be a homework check. This is a big one because it's been a long time since you did a homework check. So give yourself a good effort here, and I will see you tomorrow.